So, good afternoon everybody. I'm going to speak for a few minutes about the work that we do at the Mighty Creatives, and then I'm also going to be introducing Susie and Shannon, who are going to be talking about their work, and Ashley, who's going to be talking about their work. We're going to be doing short 5-minute bursts, including time for you to ask us questions, and hopefully we will conjure between us some meaningful responses. That's our challenge, colleagues. And then I'll be throwing things open to the floor for our discussions about all things to do with legacy and sustainability. There will be plenty of opportunity for your voices to be heard. If you think you're not being heard, or are one of those people who likes to formulate a question in writing and submit it to me personally, there are some little scraps of paper on top of the display cabinets for you to get noting things down. If you put your question and your name, I'll come to you and ask you to speak up, or just read it out on your behalf. If you write in the corner, I'm really shy, I'll probably remember to read it out on your behalf. Okay, so that's our game plan. Let's start with me. The Mighty Creatives, if you don't know us, we're the Children and Young People's Creative Development Agency, which means, quite simply, that we like to find creative solutions to the opportunities and challenges that young people face. We work across the entire East Midlands area. We're interested in a broad age range, 0 to 25, and we're particularly interested in how children and young people have the opportunity to change the world with their creativity. And for us, that means, quite simply, able to realise their rights as children, as young people, able to realise their full and true personal potential, and then finally a chance to make a difference, using their own creativity to change their life and the life of the people around them to some meaningful, lasting and positive effect. Over the last 3 years, it's been our joy to be funded by Arts Council England to be their bridge organisations. Hands up if you've heard that phrase. Well done, responsive colleagues. A bridge organisation, we're part of a network of organisations funded by Arts Council to help increase young people's participation with the arts and culture. Our definition through that work of culture is very broad. We're interested in the arts, museums, libraries, we're interested in places of worship, film, heritage. We're interested in all the things that children and young people like to do themselves on a Friday night at home, a long way away from any of the rest of us. We're particularly interested in how we overcome inequalities of access and opportunity, looking across our region and thinking, where do children and young people have a chance to take part in culture and where don't they? And where we see that there are low levels of participation in culture, what is it that we can do, not as the Mighty Creatives, but working with our partners across the region to help create new opportunities for children and young people that last. So we've got 18 priority areas across the East Midlands where we know children and young people's participation in the cultural offer that we're all part of providing seems to be low. And we've also got 4 priority groups of children and young people who don't seem to get as much of an opportunity as everybody else. And those are very young children, from about the ages of 0 to 5. They are children and young people with a disability. They're culturally diverse communities of children and young people, and that includes Black, Asian and minority ethnic. It also includes economic migrants and children from traveller backgrounds and communities. And the final group is children and young people and their families who aren't in education, employment or training. So what we're trying to do is to say, how can we get more children involved in more culture more of the time? And we've used several things to help us drive that work forward over the last 3 years. Some things you might know. Tools from Arts Council such as Arts Award, accreditation for young people's work in the arts and the development of their leadership skills. How can we help support the next generation of young people to step into a leadership position in the arts and culture and use their creativity to create more opportunities for other young people? We've also been promoting Arts Mark, a way for schools to demonstrate the breadth, depth and quality of their work with, by and for children and young people that they serve, to help make sure that their arts education is rich, outstanding and inspirational. But outside of those schemes, we've had to invent ways of filling in the gaps. How do we make sure that young people's voice is heard around the tables that make decisions about culture, and what opportunities are made available to young people? And then finally, how can we make sure in areas where there seems to not be a mismatch between the ambitions to engage young people in culture and what they actually do? What new ways of working are emerging? To fill the first, we've been using things like a programme called Board Academy, which is about recruiting and training young people to serve on the boards of cultural organisations, making sure that at the very highest level in terms of the decision making that we all make, that there are young voices represented around the table. Not to be the spokespeople for entire generations, but young people selected with skill, expertise and knowledge that can make our decision making as cultural organisations even more fit for purpose and help through that decision making our organisations become more resilient. And we've had 2 cohorts, we've met some extraordinary young people, we've got 4 young trustees on my own board, we've supported a number of other trustees of other organisations to step up, and it seems to be helping. We seem to be having better conversations about what we all do for a living in relation to our work with children and young people as a consequence. One of the other areas of work, just to finish off my small introduction to our stuff, is to say that we've then been building partnerships at scale where there doesn't seem to be enough standalone infrastructure to reach out to young people on a sustainable basis. So we've got 2 things. One's called a locally based partners programme, and that's invested in new ways of working to find new opportunities for children and young people that lead to new revenue being created, so that we end up not just bringing those young people into a project and then saying goodbye when it's done, but actually find ways of co-producing the new cultural activity with those children and their communities. So we're raising demand as well as supply. And one of our bits of learning from that piece of work is the more that we can get our audiences, our communities, our children, our young people and parents saying they want more of the stuff that you've got, the stronger the arguments are for influencing other people to bring, hopefully, their resources, whether they're of cash, time, people, opportunity, policy, whatever, to the table in a way that benefits the work that you will care about. The other key thing is we're looking about how we talk about the language of every. So trying to think at scale about every child and young person from birth to adulthood in a location, having the opportunity that we would all want them to take part in rich, high quality cultural activity. And that's a real shift for our partners, moving from really precise, focused project delivery to being part of a development conversation about what it means to grow up in an area that that organisation shares responsibility for. How can we make sure that every child and young person has a childhood that is rich in the arts, play, creativity and culture from birth to adulthood? Asking that question about the quality of childhood has opened up conversations that when we went in and said, what do you think about the arts, museums and libraries, were closed to us. So shifting our rhetoric, shifting our discourse, shifting our language to what culture brings, rather than having culture as the forefront of our negotiations with partners who might not care, but do have a deep commitment to children and young people, equality of opportunity, and narrowing that gap between those young people who have and those young people that haven't, seems to be a very bold and robust way forward for us. We're about to start another 3 years. Actually, technically, I'm 2 weeks into it, and a little bit of change, and we look forward to working with you all as our future plans unfold. That's me done. Weirdly, any questions for me? It'll be so much easier and so less artificial when I do it with the other students. Okay, any questions for me at this stage? Well, I was so inspiring, there was no need to record that silence there, Jake. We'll just see what happens next. Well, who shall I turn to next? Who wants to be up next?
Richard John's just one.
Oh, okay,
you alluded to, but didn't mention the work on the cultural life of the child. Yes. I wonder if you wanted to say something about that to the group.
Okay, I would happily do so. So the agenda that we've worked up with partners has the title The Cultural Life of the Child, and we've thrown open our doors through a series of 4 summits that have been staged across the region over the last 18 months to ask some big questions. What makes a good childhood? What's changing about childhood? And how can we help every young person have the best possible start in life? Now you realise the word arts weren't mentioned once in the framing of those questions, or museums or libraries, and that was very deliberate, to find other people who are interested in coming into that space to say, do you know what? We need to think about these things too. And that involved partners like the British Heart Foundation, Teach First, University of the First Age, the National Council for Voluntary Youth Services, and a whole host of other partners have come into it. And over a series of 4 events that looked at the early years, primary, secondary, and the transition to adulthood, we threw together answers to those questions and some inspirational thinking that might seem to create a different agenda, a different way of working. We're about to publish a blueprint which has come out from all of that work called What If Every Child Could Fly? A blueprint for a better world. And we are shamelessly idealistic about it because that's what I think culture can do. Culture can ask the big questions about the fundamental facets of being a human being that other parts of the world might not necessarily be able to grapple with. And we were keen to move to a high-level, aspirational language, rather than get stuck in some of that transactional language that we often have about what's the value of museums in schools. Well, that's a part of our debate, but we also wanted to find other people who were taking stock of the current circumstances and thinking big. We'll move from those, once we've published in hopefully a month's time, that blueprint, we'll be sharing it with colleagues, and we'd like you all to stage mini-summits on a local basis to say, what is it that we can do that gives every child the best start in life where we are? And who could we talk to about that, and how can we work together to do things in very, very different ways? So the cultural life of the child has been one of our, I guess, wheezes, really, our hypothesis to see what happens if we put something out there in a different way, if we try and stop using the words of arts, museums, libraries and culture at the forefront, and find other people who care about the thing that really is at the root of our passion, which is that children and childhood are beautiful, glorious things, and we've all got stuff that can make those things even better. So that's the work that's coming next. Thank you very much, Kevin. Any other questions for me? I should hand this over to you, Shannon, I reckon. Okay. Right, we will move now. See what I've done. To Susie.
Thank you very much. Hello. I do lots of things, but what I'm going to speak to you today about is the work that I've been doing with the Sir John Moore Foundation, which is a tiny little museum in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of nowhere. It's like midsummer. And it is a Grade 1 listed Christopher Wren built school building on the most unique site. It's impossible to put it into words without someone seeing it. But to give you a flavour, it has a primary school, a speech and language therapist, 2 residential flats, a coffee shop, a recording studio, a bar, a wedding venue, office block, an archive, a museum, an archaeological pit, an engineering workshop, a motorbike workshop. Is that it at the minute?
And a playground?
A playground, yeah. It's diverse. So it was really difficult to try and put into 7 minutes and kind of hone in on the things that Tatty's asked me to speak about today. But I've tried. If I waffle, well, he's ready to punch me.
There will be no violence. It's like poking with the end of my pencil, perhaps.
And I've done it with pictures, just because I think they say 1,000 words. But I have also printed them, so if you can't see them, don't worry, you can grab some to take home. So this is us. This is actually a 1950s photo, and this is some of our children levitating, one of the techniques that one of our photography workshops taught them, which is great. You can just see the handles of a black bin. There's a challenge for you to find. Okay, so a lot of what we do at the foundation is grant funded, same as everywhere, and there are kind of a sliding scale of a £500 specific pot to do something really small with a small group of people to we've just been awarded 220 something thousand from the Arts Council. So it really is a sliding scale of different funding that we deal with. So what I'm going to do is speak to you about the legacy that can come out of something very tiny as well as something very big, and kind of compare the two. So my first is my Incy Wincy grant, which was £1,500 awarded to us in 2007 by Leicestershire County Council. And the idea of that was for us to set up a youth club on a Wednesday evening. It's still going, all this years later. And so they gave us a little pot of money, basically to buy a games console and some footballs and some pens and paper, and to kind of kickstart the youth club. So our idea was local kids from the village, 8+, we were thinking kind of 8 to 12, and they would come and hang out, and we would also use it as an opportunity to engage young people in the heritage of the building. So every time we kind of did artwork, we had this glorious inspiration of this beautiful building, and quite a few of the kids go to school in the building, so they would see it as boring, crappy school, but we were trying to get them to see beyond the fact that it was just their school that they go to every day, and that actually they were really fortunate to be in such a beautiful, beautiful building. So this is our ongoing youth club, and once that £1,500 had been spent and we kind of had our kit, that kind of sustained us for the first year probably. And to make it sustainable, we charged our kids £1.50 a week. Now, compared to my two daughters do brownies and guides, which is knocking on for £3.75 a week now. So we try, yeah, I know. So we tried to keep it as low cost as possible, so it was as inclusive as possible. And we plan our sessions so that most of our sessions are done on site with our volunteers, leading them with this pot of equipment that we will manage to purchase. And then once every half term, we'd either have an artist or someone random, there's a falconer down there if you can see him, so we'd have kind of a random person coming in and do something spectacular, or we'd go on a trip somewhere. And with just £1.50 a week, we managed to keep that going, and it's still going today. So as you can see, kids are having loads of fun, but that's not the only thing to come out of that 1,500. So as well as the kids coming every week and having fun, it also enabled us to make links with the local SEN school. So this is our little team of young volunteers. They're sixth formers at a boarding special school, and for their work experience they come and work with young people. And some of them, I mean, Blaine has been with us 3 years now. He still comes back even though he's not at that school anymore. And he's now got the confidence to actually lead sessions as well as just come and help with them. So he'll come and set up the sports equipment and kind of take the lead. Bless him. It's also given us the opportunity to participate in local events. So this is one of our young people in our Brazilian carnival at the heart of the National Forest Festival. And that gives us a chance to shout to everyone about what we do at the John Moore Foundation, not just with the kids, but with the heritage, the wedding venue, which then pays for the upkeep of the building. It's all intrinsically linked, and it's one of the ways that we can get out there into the community. And we also had local teenagers who wanted to come and volunteer for their Duke of Edinburgh scheme, and again some of them stayed. So the lad you can see here in the picture, this is Lewis. He now teaches drums and he teaches music for our school on a Thursday. And in the same way, Shannon, she's my daughter, so she kind of didn't get a chance to choose, but started off volunteering with youth club, then led a drama club on her own, is now tutoring English 4 days a week. So it's kind of an ongoing circle. So then the teenage volunteers said, well, hang on a minute, we're putting all this effort in, where's our youth club? And so the SJMF crew was born. And this is the crew. We took them on holiday to Matlock. We stayed in Cromford Mill, and this is the end of a day volunteering for the Cromford Trust, and we were ripping out weeds and kind of clearing their canal for them in exchange for our accommodation. This group of kids is amazing, and they help us at events, they help us with heritage projects, they act as mentors for the young kids, and it's ever developing. So, I mean, most of these are now at university, and the next generation of the crew are coming through. But they're fab. Give me teenagers any day. Oh, don't point.
Just doing it.
So apart from the kind of ongoing work with the youth club, the benefits for the museum as a whole, from that directly, it led us to create an archaeology summer school, which we've run every year. So that helps us to share archaeological skills and recording skills with young people. Also means that we have an ever-changing collection for us to work on in terms of the heritage. Our kids have represented us all over the country, including at the British Library at a Mighty Creators event a couple of years ago. One of our young guys sat on the panel there. And we've also taken part in lots of museum evaluations. So they've gone in and written material for other museums about what to and what not to do. Top tip from one of our girls, don't use mannequins, they're blinking scary. And we also try and get them into other museums and galleries around the country. But in terms of the kind of business end of the foundation, what it's meant is that we are able to gain access to much bigger grants because we have a proven record of our work with young people. We also embed the site's heritage into a lot of the things that we do. So a lot of the artwork, the drama, all of these things, we take inspiration from the heritage. Most of the time they don't even realise we're doing it, but we are. And then also that gives us evidence for how we're working with young people. And then we might have had an award or 2, or 3, or 10. Okay. No? Okay, and then from the little grant we go to a big grant, the Full Monty, £80,000, that was in 2010, and that was for doing creative IT with young people. But from that, we've got an ongoing sustainable film club. They meet once every week, and they produce lots of awful sci-fi, but they also present heritage films. So this is them filming an educational resource that I then use in primary schools about the school day in Victorian era. We also set up a girls group because, you know, they don't like football and rugby, and that's all there is to do in Appleby Magna. We also had a band boot camp as part of that, and from that a subgroup of those young people went on to get funding to build a recording studio, which is now a commercial entity in its own right. I'm going really quickly and going.
No, I've got that.
And most important, from that grant, some of the schools that we were working with were so impressed with the quality of learning their kids were getting during the holidays, they approached us and said, well, how about making it formal? And fortuitously, at that time, one of the local partnership grants came up from Mighty Creatives that partnered us with an organisation called Pedestrian. They still do our marking and our accreditation for us. And we now have 32 students on site getting alternative qualifications to GCSEs, to the extent that we have outgrown the foundation, unfortunately. And so just last week we moved into our own premises with our own business with a £100,000 turnover, still going back to the foundation, using the heritage, using the space. All our art BTECs are based on the heritage and history. So the kids, even though they hate museums, are actually doing heritage and culture every single day at the end.
Round of applause. Clearly, part of the art of legacy and sustainability is to not follow the rules. But, you know, questions for Susie. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Susie, you talk about the work of the volunteers supporting your organisation, but what is your post and how are you funded?
I started off as a volunteer. So I started off in 2007 volunteering to run the youth club. And at that time I'd just gone to uni as a mature student, and so I started doing the weddings, you know, part-time. Then I started doing a bit of the museum bits, wrote my dissertation about the place, took on more of the curatorship. Then I started with the education, because my background is actually in care for children and education of children in residential homes, so it kind of all mashed together. Now, my official title is Learning and Heritage Manager, and then MD of the new business.
Thank you. Any other questions before I lean over this way?
And how do you manage the GCSE programme? Is that children who are otherwise not attending school?
Yeah, at the minute we have 32 across 5 schools. So the schools in Leicestershire have a no exclusion policy.
Yep.
And so instead of excluding them outright, they'll subcontract providers. So some of our kids we have for 1 day, some will have for 4 days. And we do BTEC, functional skills, math and English, AQA, OCN, all sorts of different qualifications.
We're just about to start doing that, so maybe we'll chat with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect discussion over lunch. I can't help but feel, thank you very much. Just one more question.
Just interested in what mechanisms you have in place for actually supporting the children or young people actually volunteering or helping deliver services.
We have some of the kids, like the kids from the special school, their staff bring them and support, and one of them in fact just started volunteering for us in her own right because she was kind of infected by the place. And then we also have our volunteer charters in place. Because a lot of our young people are young volunteers, our kind of ratio of supervision is slightly higher than it would be for adults. But it's kind of informal. I think if we get all formal about it and call them volunteers, that's why they came up with crew, because it just kind of, it didn't scare them off in that way, because they're from all sects of society. We have the kids, for example, it's a bit stereotypical, but we've got the kids doing the Duke of Ed Award who are from a certain background, and their parents are very supportive and they'll drive them to places, that kind of thing, right down to kids who we know their parents are never going to set foot on the site because it's a museum, but they've managed to break that cycle, and they do take a little bit more nurturing, I suppose, but that's kind of in our nature, and that's what makes it special.
And speaking of special, it's time to lean over this way. Actually, go for it.
Yes, Ladybird Project, which is based here. It's an Arts Council funded project. I've been in post since August last year. There were 3 main aims of the project. The first was to engage children and families with the museum and with the collection of Ladybird books that are held by the County Council Museum Service, but you know, on display here, we have some things here. Also to provide a USP for the museum and to provide a sustainable platform for the Loughborough Festival of Children's Illustrated Literature. And then finally to establish a network of partners that hopefully, you know, we can keep building on and will help strengthen the work at the museum and hopefully help to strengthen the work of our partners as well. So what I've been doing since I've been in post, there's been a few projects and it's really nice to see some of you again. One of the first things I did was went completely mental and put too many things down on a piece of paper and tried to achieve too much. So once I calmed down and scrapped some things, I basically went to the experts in the field. I didn't know Loughborough. I don't know Loughborough. I don't know the communities. So working with Alison, who used to be the LHO here, who sort of formulated the project, I got a whole list of contacts from Alison. I met with Sarah Coop, who I'm sure saw Sarah somewhere. Oh yes, you're there. I met with Sarah to talk about, you know, different families, the different groups that are in Loughborough, the people that I can contact with. And my first project was working with the local children's centres and working with Julie from Hempsall's. I went along to one of the first sort of Charnwood family network meetings, which were a group of volunteer parents who lead sessions in the children's centres across Charnwood. And they're a really engaged, passionate group of parents and one grandparent, because Mal always tells you off, who get really, really involved in things. They're really keen on volunteering, on sharing ideas, sharing knowledge. And they're despite what they say, they're a very skilled bunch of ladies. And working with them and talking to them about my ideas, we sort of honed a few things down and we decided to develop some story sets based around Ladybird books. I then went to speak to Pauline at LCC in Adult Education, and we came up with the idea to run a story set course, an 8-week course, where these parents could engage with Ladybird books, but could create these story sacks. And we created 8 story sacks altogether. 4 are here at the museum, and 4 have gone back to the parents for them to take out to their children's centres and to use. And they're circulating them, they're bringing them back to their monthly meetings, they're circulating them, they're sharing them around, and they're sharing their skills and their techniques. Now, some of these parents said, I can't sew, I have no idea. The story sacks are out down the bottom for you to have a look at. You go and have a look at them and tell me these women can't sew. You know, they're brilliant, they're creative, imaginative. I'm a big fan of storytelling. I love story. I'm not very good at it myself, but I like watching it, I like listening to it, I like seeing how people engage with it. So I was fortunate through this funding to enlist the National Storytelling Laureate, Catrice Horsley. And she came here one day to do some storytelling for us. She did 3 sessions in the day, and some of our parents from the Sure Start group, who'd never been here before, came, and they stayed all day with their kids. And they went off and they were inspired. And I'm going to use Amy as an example because I think Amy is a beautiful example. Amy is, you look at Amy and you think, she's full of confidence, shocking pink hair, big Batman jumper, you know, she looks like she's right in it. She's had some problems, she's had some issues over time, and she's slowly building her confidence up. She did the Story Sack course with us, she came to the storytelling session with Catrice, she went straight back to her Sure Start Children's Centre and set up a storytelling corner. And then she created what she now calls her magic bag, which is a bag she takes around with stuff in it she can use to tell stories. So kind of talking to Amy and finding out she's a little bit inspired and sort of talking to staff and other people, I then got Catrice back to do 2 days of training with museum staff, with library staff. There was a couple of people from Charnwood Arts came along, some volunteers from the library. And there was about 16 people altogether, did 2 days of really intensive storytelling training with Catrice. And since then, we then had a storytelling day here over Easter, and a couple of the parents who originally started right back with the story sacks in November of I can't sew, I'm too shy to do anything, stood here in the museum and delivered storytelling sessions for the general public. And that to me is legacy and sustainability. And as they were leaving, Amy then says to me, she says, well actually, she says, me, Christine and Talita were thinking of setting up her own business and going into children's theatre. All the money in the world cannot buy that. The Story Sack course cost 80 quid, all in all, because of partnership working, because I was, Sure Start provided the nursery places for the parents. Adult Education provided Heather, our tutor, for us. I paid for the materials, 80 quid. That was it, for then Amy to say, well, we're thinking of setting up on our own. You know, so it's just little things like that. That's probably my proudest part of this whole thing. You will get a chance to go and see the new gallery as well. As part of the USP part, we've managed to redesign the Ladybird gallery space. So we've got some new digital technology in there, which has just been fixed this morning. It's all just been reinstalled this morning. It's all fit and working. It looks fabulous. I'm so pleased. I've managed to commission some local artists as well. There's a couple of furniture designers from Nottingham who've designed us some new furniture. We have the most fabulous Ladybird chair, and I please ask you to go and sit on it. The story stacks are down there, so it's a real kind of, what we've tried to create is a real sort of engaging little sharing story space. So somewhere you can sit and read books, you can share stories, you can tell tales. But we've got the digital space, which is all whizzy shooty and, you know, all bells and whistles, which people do tend to like. I've done some work with Charmwood Arts as well. One of the first things I did right at the beginning was meet with Kevin, to talk to Kevin about what we could do, ways that we could work together. You know, Kevin's the expert in this, I'm not. I needed his knowledge and his expertise to work together. And he's put me in touch with James, and we've developed the History Pin project. And working with Charmwood Arts in 2020, they are working with a group of young people who, for one reason or another, are not in mainstream education. Some of these children have, well, young people have what would be termed challenging behaviours. And James has been working with these guys based on Ladybird books to create, initially it was just to create a history pin map of Ladybird in Loughborough. That's but what James has done is just gone crazy, to be honest, and has just created animation and video and photography and got these young people to really, really grow and develop. And I've been very hands-off with this project because I've not needed to get involved because the experts are doing it and they're doing it really, really well. So I encourage you to go around and please have a look at what James and the guys from 2020 have produced. And I will wrap up now. I've probably got lots more. I could probably waffle on for hours. I do apologise. I will shut up.
No need to do any of those things. Thank you very much. Any questions for Ashley, please, arising from that passionate account of the Ladybird Project?
Will you be doing guided tours at lunchtime for anyone who might be interested?
I can do. Actually, cute. I can also show you our new map. We were just very fortunate. We do have an artist living literally around the corner who used to illustrate for Ladybird books, and he's done some sessions for us. And he has created a lovely new gallery map. This is the black and white version. We also have a colour version that I noticed as I was printing it off this morning has a typo. So these are only examples, but the idea is you can have a pretty colour one, or you can have a black and white one to take home and colour in yourself. So we've got some, you know, really lovely things. But yes, if anybody wants to go and have a look round, if anyone's got any questions, once they've had a look round and a play with everything, then please come and have a word, and I'm happy to take people around if they want to.
Oh, I'm sure they'll be takers. I'm absolutely sure. Any other questions for Ashley at this point?
You've obviously built up a really strong relationship with some of the people that you've kind of worked with. What's your plans continuing that relationship, or what do you think is kind of next for the project?
Well, my contract ends a week on Friday, which is unfortunate. But we're in the position now, because we've got the Literature Festival coming up in October, there's a festival manager in place. So I'm going to be meeting with her, talking to her about the people I've been working with, the connections we've been making. So hopefully we can do that. But here in the museum itself, I mean, I've been working very closely with the museum team here as well. And we've been planning some events for over the summer. So already, Kathy, the museum manager, has been in touch with the guys from the CYPprojectsustainability project, with the storytelling, to talk to them about coming in and running some storytelling sessions here. Also as well, I mean, James ran a digital a manga session here over Easter that was okay, went okay, we needed to tweak it a little bit more, but you know, talking to James afterwards, had some ideas about maybe ways we could develop that and deliver that a bit differently to target a new audience to come into the museum, because it's that tricky sort of 15 to 19 who, you know, they only come in here if it's raining in the park or something, you know, they want to use the loo, that's it. So it's trying to get them to come in and think of this as a place to come, rather than just a place to be when it's chucking it down. So there's lots of ways that we're trying to sort of, through events and activities, just try and broaden things out and to keep people engaged.
Thank you very much. Any more specific questions before we get into our roundtable topics? Thank you, everybody. Okay, so join me, because I'm not going to applaud myself, but applauding Susie and Ashley for their presentation. Thank you very much. I'll give myself a little round of applause when you've all gone, just to make sure we all get out of here on time. So we want to open things up. We've got these two words. How do we ensure that legacy and sustainability are part of work with children and young people? And if any of you are like me and we've been working in these kinds of vein for some time, the words partnership, legacy and sustainability have travelled with us for almost as long as we've been doing this kind of work. And yet the world has changed massively around us. It's not just the age of austerity, it's not just an impending general election, it's not just massive changes in the amount of money and resource that we have to do our jobs. It's also a completely different set of expectations, perhaps, about the type of jobs that we come to do. Whether we're volunteers, whether we're professionals, whether we work in the arts, or whether we work further afield. So I'm interested in really what our words mean, our terms of engagement. What's legacy? And what have we heard our speakers say about legacy so far? Does anyone want to share their thoughts about legacy for them, perhaps with some examples from your own passion and your own work? Katie, thank you so much.
Well, I'll just use Susie maybe as an example for the legacy. I was really interested in your for your smaller grant, that £1,000. You kind of brought children in by kind of space-led activities rather than kind of having the activity the artist was. You was kind of bringing them in together to socialise and have a space, and then you introduce kind of the heritage, the artists, and I thought it was really interesting. And then I think the legacy side is that you quoted, someone said they're so infected by the place that they then became a volunteer and they brought their children. And I think for a good example maybe where you've created a legacy there is that you've got an example, you brought people in for one activity and you kind of engaged them so much that then they've felt like they've had ownership over the organisation, they've volunteered, they've brought other kids, new activities being planned. So that's kind of an example I thought you talked about a good legacy.
It is infectious. It's the only word you can use for it. I mean, you come through the gate and we always joke, that's it now, you're ours, more. Because
it's taken a sinister turn.
Yeah, people don't want to leave, and I think that every aspect, I mean, as I kind of introduced the foundation, there are so many facets to it, but it is also interlinked. Like for example, the crew, because they put in their time and they volunteer. When we started running the weddings, they got first dibs when it came to paid work for waiter and waitressing. And it's a tiny little thing, but it's their building.
What characterises infectious? You walk in and it's immediately where you want to be. How can, if you were to bottle and sell it, what would you want more places to be like?
That one you need to ask Shannon, I think, because Shannon's been there since she was this high.
I am the legacy.
It's possible, folks. You have it in the room.
I suppose, cheesy though it is, it's just a family.
It's a family.
Yeah.
I mean, it is literally a family from your point of view.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but it is the oddest mishmash of people imaginable. It really is, and I think that the thing.
Weirdos, I think, would be the phrase.
But what kind of holds it all together is the passion that everyone has for the site and its heritage is the pin that holds it all together, whether it's Marjorie, the elderly gardener, who's ever so grumpy, to the youngsters in the youth club that keep coming back, to it. That's the pin. It's the fact that everyone loves the place so much. That's what kind of holds them all together, regardless of what walk of life they're from.
I think what I love is that there is just so many different things that you can do there. And one of the key questions for me about the legacy trajectory from your work is that example you gave of a young person coming back after the project funding was over. They can still carry on coming back.
Yeah.
And that idea of doors open and a family environment that welcomes you and makes you feel part of it is certainly evident when you get there. Any other thoughts from the audience about legacy? What is it? Yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'm responsible for running a family of services in Loughborough Council, and one of the things that I think when we've made it is when we get a sense of ownership for things. And you're talking about people coming together to socialise, but when people start to kind of think about they can occupy the space and they can come in and they're welcome. So, you know, I'm really pleased that with the Ladybird Project that was aspired and brought new people in that wouldn't normally come to the museum and have a feeling of they can do it, and there's a bit of ownership there. And it helps develop a sense of pride. With the museum, there's now, you know, regulars in, and once they're through the doors, it's how we keep making sure they're always feeling welcome and they're feeling part of it. Yeah.
Thank you. And Alison, I think you wanted to come into.
Yeah, I mean, wanted to say something similar, really, that the challenge always is, you know, ensuring that we can get something meaningful out of these sort of short-term projects. I think what I was really interested in at St John Moores was the sort of idea that from these really small, you know, pots of funding, you're managing to get such a good embedded kind of legacy from it and continuing engagement. And I suppose it's the way that you've built that community feeling, which means that then you can then find other pots of funding to sustain that further. So I think that's maybe somewhere we can learn from how you approach things and how we can sort of build on what's happened here at the Ladybird Project.
It's that principle about it, the expectation seems to be at the beginning of a relationship, not the start of a project.
Yes,
and the mindsets are completely poles apart from each other. And it's how we act in a way that says we're passionate about our relationship with you. And this is the thing we've got to do together first, but what happens next is part of that generosity of spirit that we're hearing. Any other reflections on legacy? We've heard about your work, now is your
I was going to say about ownership and belonging, kind of echoing what you were saying, Sylvia. We finished a project recently that was an early help grant with Sarah, and you just talked about the manga workshop, and the young people actually led those workshops, which were for young people, and the two people that led the workshops have Asperger's and found it very difficult to communicate when we first started the group, but then felt able to run a session kind of a few months later in a public place that had been publicly advertised. Kind of that belonging and ownership, that's something that's going to progress and progress. It's such a brilliant thing to see.
Absolutely. And it's one of the key things that comes on for a lot of our work with young people. It's the most thing they want in the world is somewhere to be safe with their friends.
Yeah.
That sense of being and belonging, of being welcome, is absolutely fundamental. Anything can then happen, and it doesn't have to be expensive, £80. But that sense of I've got somewhere to be safe with my friends that I can rely on, that will rely on me to be trusted and trustworthy in that space is absolutely crucial.
I don't think it's just that, I think it's feeling like you contribute as well.
Yeah.
Not just, you can come, it's like actually we quite need you to come. And then that's why people come back and lead things, isn't it? Because they're important.
So you can lead if you wish. There's that opportunity that's available to you. Your relationship can grow. Any other legacy points? What about... Yes.
Sorry, can I just say
Please do.
the Adult Learning Service, we worked with the group to try and get the Story Sacks running. Heather ran the Story Sacks group, and as you said, a lot of the ladies came at the beginning and said, I can't sew, I can't do this and I can't do that. Heather worked with them for 8 weeks, and the results were just amazing. I couldn't believe them. They were some of the best story sacks that have been produced, I think, and we've done lots of story sack courses. But we've talked to those ladies and they're all really keen to do other things. I mean, it was lovely what you said about the ones that want to set up their own business. That's, you know, that was new to us, and certainly something we'll recall.
Well, that was one of the things that
it
just kind of threw it in as she's walking out the door.
That was just amazing.
What do you want?
But we are already thinking about, you know, they have been in touch, they've sent me their emails, they want more learning, and it's, you know, it's going to support them. We will offer them something else. Heather's already got lots of ideas that we're going to float with them. So I think, you know, the opportunity's there, and we're not going to, it's not just, you know, this is over. Like you said, it's not just a project that's now finished. We'll continue working with them. So.
Do you want to say anything at this point, Heather?
No, well, just that they were so enthusiastic. They were full of energy. They had ideas. They didn't quite know how we were going to carry them out, but we did it, and I'm very proud of them. They were very good.
Thank you very much. I have another word to grapple with. I'm afraid I'm going to turn to the sustainability word. Is this what you want to talk about? No. Put your hand down, if I may. Do, you've got the stage. The sustainability, how can we make these things last, these activities open? What are your
Well,
thoughts?
I was just going to come back to Ladybird Project really, and I was one of the people who had the training through Patrice Horsley, and I was thinking it's not just necessarily, I mean, fundamentally what we're talking about is the people that we're working with, but also for staff as well. It's incredibly important to have that training. You know, library staff, very often the way we storytell is through books, and so to have the opportunity to try something completely different was amazing, and we're getting together as a group of library staff to talk about how we can develop that training across the library service, which inevitably, eventually, hopefully will benefit the children and young people who come into the library as well. So I think it's, and that is a sustainability thing as well, isn't it? So.
Nicely done. Absolutely. That tumble forward factor in the workforce,
Yes.
whether we're volunteers, paid professionals, whoever, we've got skills, we've made connections, we've done things differently. Oh my goodness, we want to continue them on as well. Thank you. Sylvia.
I just want to add another word to sustainability really. I think organic is a good word because it's what you've all been describing is kind of organic growth and how things one have led to another, and there's not a kind of natural process there. It's actually the people that have driven the projects from their own excitement and own passion.
Yes. And then may need to be a regimentation to how we manage projects, but there should never be regimentation in our relationships with others, unless we're a regiment, of course, being mindful of the fact of the proud history of the armed forces in our region. So, where can we go next? Sustainability. Has anyone found something that they think is, oh, do you know what? This has now got legs. Somebody else's work around the room, if they think, do you know what? I think we're onto something here in terms of the sustainability of a way of working or a relationship or something.
I think our approach, people ask what do we do, and you know, it can be a very long list of things, and it's very boring to listen to me talk for more than 2 minutes. But
I'm timing you now.
Okay. So I've simplified it, and I said that we're open to talking to anybody, and it's that dialogue, and that dialogue can lead you in any direction. But where it progresses is when it leads to relationship. And I can't think of any project that we've done that hasn't led to relationship, and where that relationship is still open over 40 years. Yeah, and some of them go back that long. And in that we have become very embedded within this community, within this area, and further afield. And the purpose of that relationship is benefit. It's to explore benefit. It's the benefit of the partners that we work with, to the benefit of the people that we work with, and to our benefit, you know, the benefit of sustaining this organisation that delivers something to other people. And at times we get drawn into doing all sorts of other things, but essentially what we're bringing to it is a doorway that's about creativity. And we should focus on that because we're an arts organisation, yeah? But it can lead us into all sorts of other things. Other people bring other things to that. So I think for us, and it's not just about project work, it's about continuing to have that dialogue. So if someone wants help to do something, it's not about doing a project with them, we'll respond. If someone wants help to get money for something, or an advice, then we will respond. You know, it's not a regimented relationship in that sense, it's very, very open. And I think for us that's what sustainability is about.
Hearing you speak, Kevin, it's about being part of what makes a place work.
Yeah.
Which is not about being an arts organisation necessarily at its front edge. Its leading edge relationship is how do we make things work and this place work for the people within it.
Yeah, essentially.
And I like that kind of thinking. Anyone here read the Warwick Commission review of the value of art and culture? Good, well done, colleagues. It's a bit of homework for you all. Some of you I'm shocked at, I have to say, but you know, that's the day job. One of the things it ends on is a grand flourish about how we make an ecosystem that cares about having art and culture in people's lives. Everything from the high-performing growth industries that are the creative and cultural sectors through to the minutiae of our individual relationships and things that we get hooked on when we take part in arts and cultural activity. One of the last section is called Making the Local Matter. And I really like that sense. I was inspired to think about it because you use the word organic, but there's that other definition of sustainability, which is about our stewardship of resources, as well as our ability to generate money and maintaining that relationship. So I like that idea of we are part and parcel. We are fundamentally part of the fabric of what it is to have a great life in the place that we work and live in. I think it's an absolutely important part of it. You also spoke about promiscuity. There's no one we won't talk to, because actually we're all part and parcel of making this place work. Thank you. Any other thoughts on sustainability?
Just as Jake is sitting down there, I mean, the reason Jake is sitting there
and waving for the tape.
Unfortunately, Lawrence can't be with us, but the reason Jake is there is because Jake emailed us just by chance one day and said, "Are you doing anything?" You know, so can we come and help out with an audio project? We're audio, you know, we're qualified audio producers. Can we do something with you? And I went, "Oh, actually, just doing the touch screens. I want some oral histories. Can you come and do that?" And basically, you know, they know what they're doing. I let them go, gave them some contacts, said, "Go and see what you can do." They were talking to people, got more contacts, blah, blah, blah. Suddenly we've got a whole bank of oral histories. But what it's also done is, through this project, I've put Jake and Lawrence in touch with Heritage Interactive, who produced our touch screens for us. So they've made a professional contact there. They're here doing this, you know, so hopefully, if you need any audio recording doing, any audio producing, there's your man sitting at the end there. You know, so hopefully, you know, I'm not saying that I've helped launch their careers or anything like that, but, you know, if we can say that, you know, if we can say that we've supported two young guys who are, and everybody who's actually was interviewed by them, who I've spoken to, said, ever so professional, lovely boys, really professional. So, you know.
So what phone number should we call?
Do you know what? I've only got their email address. But, you know, but it's that kind of thing. You know, it's about engaging with the community, it's about the people. You know, the great warm feeling of getting, you know, the likes of Christine coming in, signing up to do a workshop with the kids that had nothing to do with Ladybird at all. She just came in because she'd seen something and went, "Oh, I'm going to come to that with the kids." Brilliant, you know. But, you know, supporting people like Jake and Lawrence who want to, you know, start up a business, start their new careers. So if we can say that we've been able to support that as well, that's the sustainability thing that I think sometimes gets lost in this short-term project funding, where the focus is very much based around the museum and we're thinking about, oh God, footfall donations, you know, bums on seats, all that kind of stuff. But actually, the sustainability moves further out. And I've made quite a conscious decision doing this project, particularly with commissioning people to do stuff, is to try and keep it as local as possible. So work with companies within Leicestershire or the East Midlands where possible, to try and keep it local, to try and sort of keep that economy, that sustainability, that network going. So hopefully that's worked. You'll have to let me know in 12 months.
So we're back here with more teas,
here.
coffees and chocolate biscuits. I mean, you mentioned earlier, and I'm just sorry to pick on it in a way, but that idea of planning beyond the project officer. Yes, your contract comes to an end, but the ambitions don't. What is that mindset that says, you know, planning for 6 to 12 months?
I've done short-term projects before, and you know, that kind of thing at the end where you turn off the computer, you hand over the file to your now ex-manager, and you know that that's it. It will be put on a shelf, put away, and you know, any contacts you've made, any networks, will just die. And I've also taken over from a project, you know, where a project officer has left and there's been a gap, and then I've gone in, and all those contacts that were made have gone. Because once you've made those contacts, you let them go, and then you go back to them, they're like, "No, you dropped us, we don't want to know." So you've got to maintain that, and I've said right from the start when I first started, that yes, it's all very well saying work with this group, these people, but once I'm gone, who's going to do the work? Because obviously I'm here and it's my job to do it. I can't expect somebody else within the museum team to pick up my job. But if there is the odd contact, ways of keeping involved, and actually maybe not leaving that whole sustainability thing to the responsibility of the museum. So like Pauline continuing to work with the Sure Start parents. You know, James has now got the contact with 2020, and I think there may be some other projects that Charnwood Arts do with 2020. You know, the fact that we got in a room together and we sat down, and maybe the initiation was Ladybird, but it carries on. You know, that is kind of our sustainability and our legacy. So it might not be museum-centric. We've got a beautiful new gallery, you know, but if we can encourage those people to keep coming back, but also those other networks and things that we've maybe started or helped to encourage or to support, and I think that is really, really important to keep that going.
And I think it's a real responsibility, because you hit upon something which is about that responsibility of when you're working with people and you're raising their expectations and excitement, is being very honest about how long this thing lasts for. And you know, and if it is finite, then that's it. If you can connect them to other things or inspire them to carry on themselves. So the whole bit about self-organisation, but I think thinking about the way in which you exit or continue at the beginning of engaging with them is very, very important. So some years ago we did a lot of projects with local authorities around based on consultation or creative consultation. And the very sort of first one or two projects we felt that communities were very badly let down by the follow-through from other agencies. And we learned some harsh lessons then about how we would engage in that work in future. And if that support wasn't there behind our work, we wouldn't take it on. If someone was offering us £20,000 and no support to those communities following through on the work, then we wouldn't do it. You know? And it's, you know, if you have the capacity to make that commitment, to do that work, to seriously engage people in things that will change their lives, then you have to stay there, you have to keep with it. And there are structures to do that so that you don't have to spend enormous amounts of time. In the whole change of the area down by the station in Loughborough, we worked with that community over 10 years from the initial concentration of work. We just said, we are always here. We're a phone call away. Next initiative, we are here. We will respond to you. We didn't have to be there every year. They did their own things. We established a community group through the work. You know, and we called it dreaming for real. We didn't say this is planning for real. This is going to happen tomorrow. This is how we're coming. It's dreaming for real. You know? And it's just reminding me of that project.
No, it's really powerful. Thank you very much. One of the books that I picked up again preparing for today was, has anyone else, my reading list, I expect you to be on the same page as me. Bob James's work about mindful museums. Is anyone a Canadian academic? Anyone with me? We need to get to bookshops more clearly as a brand. One of the things that Bob talks about is the mindful museum, and it's this concept of if we're not stewards of people and planet, then being stewards of things is pointless. So it's quite a provocation to people in the museum sector that says, you know, if all we care about is the things that we're guarding, if the world outside has gone to hell in a handbasket, the fact that we've guarded them really makes no difference. And so his whole perspective is if we steward people, if we take part and parcel of that responsibility of ours to steward that place, everything else will become more sustainable. And it's about imagining our work in that concept of that construct of a whole series of interrelationships. We are only our connections, is one of his powerful arguments, and I think it's something that's been very, very well evidenced today. What's sustainability? It's keeping the glue together, I reckon, and it's keeping us glued to each other, because we'll be surprised who we find out there who has a similar passion to ours if we just go into that discussion with an open heart and a generous spirit. Any closing or concluding thoughts from colleagues? Because I'm aware I'm hitting the wrong end of my timetable, and therefore we need to be moving into the next stage. Any rousing finales from colleagues?
Sorry, I just wanted to say, talking about sustainability and carrying it further, I went into a school the other day in Birstall to talk to a member of staff there about doing some work in the school, and she mentioned two parents who come to the childminders group that they have in their school, who had talked about story sacks and what a fantastic time they'd had on a recent story sack course, and that they thought she should be doing story sacks in the school. She said that the story sacks had been happening in the library, so I was trying to work out who had been doing the story sacks in the library. But in Digging Deeper, she was talking about this project. And the two parents that had been attending, when she said the stories, they didn't keep the story sacks, they sent them somewhere else. I said, did they go to the museum and children's centres? And she said, oh yes. I said, was it the Ladybird Project? And as soon as I said that, she said, yes, that was it. So, word is already spreading, that's all I wanted to say. Things are happening, this is in this was in Birstall.
Ashley punches the air. Visual record.
This is in Birstall, and the school in Birstall have asked that Heather go and do some story sacks with them. So I think that's impact.
That's one for the evaluation report.
Thank you very much. There were some other hands up just in our rousing finale.
Just really to say thank you to Tati for organising this, because I think in terms of talking about legacy and sustainability, this at the end of the project as well is very important, as well as the beginning of the project, because we're reminding ourselves of what we do want to do, and is we don't want things to disappear on a file. We do want to keep all of this communication open and all of the loose contacts that are made. So I would put another word in there, which is responsibility. So if you all take responsibility for that, that'd be great.
Fantastic, thank you. There were a couple, yes.
I just wanted to say that in terms of sustainability,
More coffee.
I mean, obviously, coming from a public service as well, it was just picking up on what you were talking about earlier, was that what it's forced us to do, I think, having that kind of that question mark over our spending, which particularly as a statutory service we've not had before, what it's forcing us to do is to go right back to what exactly did we set up a library service or whatever for in the first place. And it is about equality of access and learning and making sure people get the best opportunities that they can. So it's quite an interesting time for us to be thinking about sustainability in a really big way and thinking what that forces us to do is to go back and say, what are we here for in the first place?
Absolutely. So, just my final word. Susie, anything you want to say?
I don't think so, just that I'd be happy to have a chat with anyone while eating sandwiches.
Got the point. Actually, anything else you want to say?
No, again, if you want me to take you on a guided tour and show you where everything is, I'm more than happy to do so, and happy to chat about lots of stuff I have completely missed out of our project. So, yeah, I'm here all afternoon.
Thank you very much. My final thing is to say thank you to everyone for taking part. My personal view is that sustainability is in our hands, and it's up to us to find the mechanisms to take things forward. An organisation like mine gets to use some of the resources we're given to help other people do their work. And I think it's about the changes that we can create. So we're moving from that traditional way of reporting, how have you spent our money, to a more proactive, progressive form of reporting, which is what have you been able to build with our money? And quite simply reframing the question and reframing the expectation that resources have to now lead to something else happening rather than be finite, I think is one of the biggest mind shifts that we can all make. So thank you to my speakers, to you, a beautiful audience, to Jake for keeping us recorded, and to Tati for bringing us all together.
And can we also thank Richard for being just such a fantastic host of the roundtable discussion. You're a legend. The magic happened here.
Some people think I'm a pain in the neck. I won't say, but thank you very much. A round of applause to everyone.